Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and today we're going to look at the Acer Iconia W510. This is a Windows 8 tablet. Now you can tell just from the size, I'm holding it right here, this guy is not very big at all, 10.1 inch. So it's about the same size as an iPad, and actually a little bit lighter. But it's running full Windows 8 because it has an Intel Atom dual-core CPU inside. So what does that mean? When you've got Windows 8 inside and a package this small, you can do an awful lot with the same kind of portability that you have for an Android or an iOS tablet. We're going to look at it now. The Acer Iconia W510 is available now, and it comes in two storage capacities. With a 32 gig, that's $499, and a 64 gig, that's $599. Those are both relatively affordable prices, and they certainly compete with the iPad and higher-end Android tablets like the Samsung Galaxy Note 10.1 and even the higher capacity Nexus 10. But what makes this tablet so special that you should consider it above the iPad or above your favorite Android tablet that you've been crushing on? Well, this runs full Windows 8. This is not just Windows RT that's limited to the Microsoft Store applications. Full Windows 8. And what does full Windows 8 mean instead of RT? Well, you've got the desktop, and of course you have the desktop itself to look at here on Windows 8, but you can run all sorts of applications. You can see I've got several applications installed. These are straight Windows 7, otherwise known as x86 applications. If you've got Photoshop, if you've got whatever your Windows 7 app is of choice, you can install it on here. Now obviously there's no built-in optical drive in something this small, so you're going to have to use a USB external CD/DVD drive to install your apps or download them over the air on the cloud, what have you, but you can put them on here. Now with a touch of the front capacitive button, we're back here in what's now called the Modern UI, formerly Metro, the live tile interface. And this is running on an Intel Atom 1.8 gigahertz dual-core CPU. Now, you know, Atoms, they're famous for netbook-like performance, but Windows 8 is certainly optimized for lower power CPUs, and also the latest Intel Clover Trail CPUs are a bit more zippy, so it's not too punishingly slow. But here in live tile mode, where it's really optimized for mobile applications and lightweight applications, nice and sprightly. You get the desktop mode, we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but there certainly is, it's more slow than a Core i5 or i7 computer would be, or obviously your desktop computer, but it's manageable. First, let's look at some of the features on this. 10.1 inch 1366 by 768 display. Now, I'm not going to complain about that resolution and say, oh, I wish it was 1080p, because the job of this tablet here is to be affordable. That increases the price. The other point is when you get to desktop mode right here, you can see the size of the icons. Everything is readable. If you open up a web page here, the text is very easy to read. One thing about desktop mode under Windows 8, it's pretty similar to Windows 7 in terms of font scaling. That is, when you have a 1080p display on a small screen like this, text is really tiny. You have to start to turn on visual scaling to make things readable. So a very nice display, very easy to read. I'm fine with the resolution, especially given the price. Speaking of the display, Acer doesn't say this is an IPS display, but it sure looks like it has great contrast, wonderful viewing angles, pretty much close to 180-degree viewing angles, nice color saturation, 350 nits of brightness. So whatever this technology is that they're not quite saying as they brand it as their own Acer's Cinecrystal name, it's an LED backlit display that's certainly IPS-like in quality. Again, happy to see that for the price. 1.3 pounds, so this is a pretty light tablet. White in the front, obviously, and here we have the docking connector, because one thing, you can buy this bundled with a keyboard dock that has the usual ever-popular battery inside to extend run times on it. It's got two USB ports, I'll install a keyboard with a trackpad too, and I'll show you what that looks like. So these two connectors are for locating it on the keyboard dock, and this one here is for the actual data connection, and this is also where the charger plugs in. And you can put it in the dock backwards too, so if you want to use it sort of like in presentation mode, you can too. It has stereo speakers. Here's one of the speaker holes right here. There's one on the opposite side to match it. There's microSD card. Now they say this is SC compatible, but we actually used XD card, 64 gig SanDisk card in here, and it worked just fine as well. We have our micro USB port, but don't panic, this is a standard USB host port. It's just that the thing is so small there's not enough room for a full-size USB port, so Acer gives you a little dongle adapter in the box. So here's a little adapter, and you can see this has a full-size female USB 2.0 port on here. This is USB 2.0. So you can use any USB peripheral that you want with this, whether it's a modem dongle or an external hard drive, game controller, anything like that. You can also use a USB hub with this. The only reason they have to do this, like I said, is just not enough room for them to put this big fat port on this 0.35 inch thin tablet. Over here we have a micro HDMI port. These are your volume controls right over here. Built-in microphone hole, power button on the corner, rotation lock slider, 3.5mm combo audio jack, headphone mic, also works with speakers, nothing else up top. And on this side here, nothing but the Iconia branding and another speaker hole. Now if we look at the back, we have nice faux metal. This is all plastic, this tablet here. Not too creaky, I have to say, and it doesn't flex a whole lot. I'm pushing on it now and you don't see much bending going on there, but it's nice looking. Yes, it's plastic, but it's nice looking, clean design. 8-megapixel camera here with LED flash. 2-megapixel camera on the front, handy for video chat with Skype. NFC, and it's telling you, here's your little hotspot for your NFC right there, and that's just about everything that's going on the back side. So nice, light, 1.3 pounds, very portable, very easy to hold. Resolution is a good match for the display, so everything is readable. Yet you've got full windows on board, not bad. And this is what the charger looks like. It's a compact wall wart charger. It kind of looks like a mobile tablet charger, but this is 12 volts, not your usual 5 volt. Just keep that in mind. And this is the proprietary charging connector that it uses. Now for those of you who are also considering an Intel Core i5 tablet, there's the Acer Iconia W510. Now of course there's some competing tablets too. Samsung has their Ativ 700T tablet. There are not too many Core i5s on the market, but we'll be having MS Surface Pro soon. But if you want to see the size and weight difference kind of thing, well, you obviously can't see the weight difference here, but we're going to show you the size difference right now with the Acer Iconia W700. So this is an Intel Core i5 tablet right here, also made by Acer obviously. Bigger, also heavier. This is 11.6 inches, which is pretty common size for the Core i5 tablets. Thicker as well, but faster and more capable. So if we put them on top of each other, you can see the difference in footprint right there. And while the W700 weighs close to 2 pounds, we're talking about only 1.3 pounds for the W510. So this guy's much more portable. This is much more of, again, your iPad or Android substitute for those of you who need a tablet that actually does more. And in terms of thickness, they're both pretty thin, but you can see the difference right there. Holding the W700 for an hour while you're using it starts to feel a little bit like a burden, whereas certainly that's not the case for the W510. Now another thing about the W700, just like other Core i5 tablets, see right here we have vent holes. And though you can't hear it because it's not too loud right now, there's a fan running in here. These need to be cooled, just like your notebook computer does running on the same CPU. So that's another consideration. Also reduced battery life. Our friend over here is a fanless design. That's how Intel Atoms run. They work a lot like ARM9 compatible mobile OS CPUs, and also much better battery life. No fan holes not needed. And now we're going to compare it to the iPad with Retina display, 9.7-inch tablet. And you can see we're talking about just about the same footprint here. Different aspect ratio since the iPad is 4:3, so it's going to be a little bit longer this way, potentially a little bit shorter this way. And we'll see the overlap. We'll put the Acer on top in this case, and you can see it's a bit longer because of the difference in aspect ratio. It's also a lot shorter if you look here. But certainly in the same class of portability, these two devices. And in terms of thickness, they're actually very similar in thickness. The iPad has a taper that makes it look a little thinner on the edges, but pretty close right here. So what do you get inside? As I mentioned, you have a 1.8 gigahertz dual-core Intel Atom CPU. That's the Z2760 Clover Trail. Same thing you're going to find in the Samsung Ativ 500T, which is also running on an Atom CPU. And also on the Asus competing 810 model Vivo Tab that has a detachable keyboard dock as well. That's pretty much the standard right now for Intel Atom. 2 gigs of DDR2 RAM, that is the maximum amount of memory. That's because that's as much as the Intel Atom Clover Trail CPU can address. So there's no point in physically trying to upgrade it. The CPU can address more. You either get 32 or 64 gigs of flash storage. It's eMMC, so similar to SSD technology. Again, that's soldered on board too. Now if you go for that 32 gig model, it's kind of tempting because $499, well that's cheap, and even some places like Micro Center for the holidays have recently had a price as low as $399 on sale. A little crazy lost leader there to bring you in for holiday shopping. A warning is you're not going to have much storage available to you. There is no recovery partition on the 32 gig model. You get recovery DVDs instead because they don't want to take up room with the recovery partition. But still, you only have about 10 gigs free out of the box. And this is full Windows 8 here, so you know what 10 gigs free means. You've had laptops or your desktop PC. That's not so much. And if you get the 64 gig model, you have about 35 gigs free, which is much more capacious. Still not a whole lot for a Windows machine, but enough to get you going. You can store stuff, your media files, your documents, things like that on microSD cards. But also it has an 11 gig recovery partition, and on the desktop you'll see an icon for the Acer Recovery Manager. In fact, it will remind you eventually to run that, and you can put recovery on a USB flash drive that will offer to reclaim that 11 gigs of space and attach it to your primary Windows partition, so you'll get 11 gigs back. Much more attractive there. Now we have the 64 gig model here, so I haven't experienced this myself, and folks who do get the 32 gig model say that it's pretty hard to get this guy to boot off of the DVDs if you need to do a recovery. So keep that in mind. Unless you're pretty technical and you can set up a USB hub to plug in your DVD drive for the recovery things and also a external USB keyboard, it's going to be challenging. If you go with the 64 gig, it's much more straightforward. You either boot right off the recovery partition if you ever need to wipe this to factory settings, or you make that USB recovery key, and that's a much more turnkey process. The tablet has dual band Wi-Fi 802.11 BGN Bluetooth 4.0 high speed NFC. As we noted, there's a little NFC indicator on the back there. And it has a 3650 milliamp lithium polymer 2-cell battery that's sealed inside. There's no way to take it out very easily and get to that battery. Now that might not sound like a whole lot of battery power. We're starting to see some Android tablets with insane amounts of milliamps, like 9,000 or so, but the Intel Atom on here is just amazing. It's so powerful that this tablet with average use goes for about 8 to 9 hours of actual use time, and standby they claim is at about 3 weeks, and it's been absolutely stupendous. It's been like a mobile OS tablet. I never shut this down. I've been using this for a week, and when I'm not using it, I just lightly tap on the power button, the same way you would with an iPad or Android tablet. There it is, it's off. Just tap on it again, and we're ready to go. Just like that. So why bother shutting it down? It's very convenient, it's instant on, it's all the things that you don't think Windows is. So that's the beauty of Atom. The thing just really runs forever on battery. If you get the optional keyboard dock, you can go even longer. And that keyboard dock is so far sold in bundles. I haven't seen it sold separately, so you're going to buy it with the tablet if you want to get it. It adds about $130, $150 to the price. But awesome battery life, instant on technology, that's what Atom is good for. What it's not so fantastic for is for those of you who need to run demanding applications. If you want this to be your primary PC, think about that again. It's just not the sharpest knife in the box. We said the same thing about the Samsung ATIV 500T, which is running on the same Atom CPU. If you're in the live tile interface right here, everything is just as zippy as it can be. The only thing you're depending on for some of these live tiles is your internet connection, because a lot of these are pulling data off the internet, for example. There's our Bing search and Bing trending information app right there. Once it gets the net connection, it's great. You've got our weather here. It's going to pull the latest forecast. You're just waiting on the network, and that's about it. But it's fast, it's responsive. Applications, PIMs, email work fine. We've got our Xbox Live Music and video players on board here. All very lightweight. Can play 1080p video very nicely. That's one thing the Intel Atom with SGX 545 graphics is pretty good at. It can play HD video just fine. Got a nice interface for music here. This is not a lesson on how to use Windows 8, so we won't spend too much time with that, but just so you can hear the speakers, we're going to stream a song from Xbox. For a tablet, really pretty good volume from the speakers. We're at about 70% volume right now, and you can hear it just fine. Likewise, it does fine with YouTube videos. You can play them either using the Internet Explorer 10 that's here in the live tile interface, or the full Internet Explorer that's on the desktop. Either way is going to work just fine. 1080p doesn't make too much sense on a display that's only 1366 by 768, but if you're going to use that micro HDMI cable and plug it into something that's full HD, well, then it does make sense. If you want to get to the desktop, just tap on the desktop tile, and we've got some applications installed here, a whole lot in fact. Acer does not put too much junkware in here, and for that we're happy. There's several Acer utilities and their own camera app, which does much better than the Windows app if you actually want to take pictures. And we're just going to launch Office 2013 so you can see how that runs. Full Office 2013, this is not the RT version. Launching it off the hard drive now. kind of just added a couple of Acer plugins there, so it took a little bit longer than normal. And if you want to start typing, there it is. You can use the on-screen keyboard, you can use a Bluetooth keyboard, you can use a USB keyboard, or you can use a keyboard dock, so lots of options there. Easy keyboard to use, good auditory feedback. There is no haptic feedback on this guy. If we tap on the menu items, you can see they load fairly quickly. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay, so again, this is not your Core i5, but very usable for Office. Now, if you're going to use something like Photoshop on this, well, if you're running filters and you're working with large image files or raw files, for example, that are, say, 20 megs or something like that, you're going to notice the filters take some time to execute, but you can do it. And that's the beauty of this tablet. You can actually put Photoshop on here. Games, this is an Intel Atom, folks. Casual games are fine, but you're not going to be playing Left 4 Dead 2 on this and saying, wow, look at those great frame rates. That is not what this product is for. The casual games, the games from the Microsoft Store, they're fine, however. So we've got Gun for Hire here, obviously a 3D game, it's a shooting game. And it's going to play just fine. So you certainly can game on here. It's just your traditional games on DVDs that are going to be a challenge. Some of them at least. When it comes to benchmarks, PC Mark 07 benchmarks this at 1248. Now, your typical Core i5 Ultrabook will score at 5,000 to 10,000, depending on the speed of the SSD on there, because they like to weight the SSD speed a lot. And Core i5 tablets so far have scored for us in the upper 4,000s to 5,000. So obviously, when you're looking at 12,048, this guy is not as fast. Again, not a computationally heavyweight device here. For Windows Experience Index, you can see processor 3.4, RAM 4.6, graphics for desktop 3.6, gaming graphics 3.3, primary hard disk, which is actually the eMMC flash drive, 5.8. So as a second computer, as a mobile tablet, makes a lot of sense. And again, that's the same thing we said about the Samsung ATIV 500T. Now, one thing I will say in comparison to the Samsung, this guy is actually more responsive. Now, both of those tablets got a whole slew of updates from Intel and the manufacturers. When the Atom tablets first came out, there were some bugs and there were some issues, and they were crashy. And usually you don't see blue screen of death in Windows too often. We got those. So after the update, stability greatly improved, performance improved somewhat on the Samsung and greatly on this guy here. And really, this guy is actually a bit zippier. What are you losing by not getting the Samsung ATIV if you go with the Acer instead? There is no digital pen. This does not have the Wacom Active Digitizer and Digital S Pen that the Samsung has. So for those of you who are avid note takers, keep that in mind. You could use something like Sketch with this. We got Sketch installed here, and you could take notes with your finger. Oh boy, that's just not much fun, is it though? And you can use a capacitive stylus just like you do with the iPhone, but the tracking with capacitive stylus on this has not been very good so far. But here we have Sketch, and I'm going to write sideways since I'm sitting sideways here. And you can do notes just like that if you want to with your finger. And again, the capacitive stylus, it shows some jitter. The lines are not really very smooth, so I wouldn't put this as a primarily excellent note taker for those of you who want to use a pen. If you want to use a keyboard, awesome. Sure, it's awesome. And so you can see for yourself, this is an MPEG-4 high quality video that we've got, 1080p. It's playing just fine. So for video playback, this guy works pretty well. Now, if you want to use the 8 megapixel rear camera to take pictures, since this is not that burdensome a tablet, you can certainly do so. I suggest you do not use the standard camera application that comes with Windows 8. It takes absolutely atrocious pictures, and instead, we've got the Acer camera application loaded here, and it actually takes decent pictures. Not as good as your 8 megapixel smartphone, though. It seems like they didn't really work on the software all that hard. And shutter times, well, they're a little bit slow, so we've got my hand right here, and you can take a picture. And you can see that while it works on focusing, slows down for a little bit. Aha! My God, that was some phenomenal lag, wasn't it? So they got some work to do, obviously, with that application. Let's try that again and see if we can do. A little touch focus to help it out first. Helps it out a little bit faster. It can also shoot 1080p video. Now the picture quality actually isn't bad when you're using that application. And there we have a wonderful picture of my hand, but gets the job done. The front 2 megapixel camera is really very good for Skype, for video chat. Of course, you can use other services as well. And pretty bright, pretty sharp, not complaining there. So all in all, given the relatively low price tag that's competitive with the iPad and with top Android tablets, if you're looking for a tablet that can do more, that can run full Windows applications, well, it's pretty darn compelling. It's not going to be as swift and fast as your notebook computer, most likely, if you're running those Windows 7 apps, but the LiveTile UI applications are all quite good, and the games inside of there run well. So I give it a thumbs up as being a real bargain, actually, and a very powerful tablet. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, you can use this much like you do those mobile OS tablets. This is still a Windows tablet, so you're going to have your Windows updates and your antivirus to keep track of. Microsoft includes their Security Essentials and Defender on here, and that's self-updating and does a pretty good job, so you don't have to have a panic about that. And also, Windows updates become less intrusive. They are now automatic, and I think that's a good thing since a lot of people really weren't good about installing the Windows updates, but it'll give you 2 days before it nags you to actually reboot in most cases, unless something is really important. So you're not going to be interrupted all the time by Windows updates in terms of disturbing your workflow. It's just going to download those in the background and take care of it for you. So that's the Acer Iconia W510. It's available now, and for $499, it's pretty compelling. It's the same price as an iPad or a top-end Android tablet, but it can obviously do a lot more because you're not just running a mobile operating system that's limited to just mobile apps. You've got the full power Windows in here. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Don't forget to visit our website to read the full review and subscribe to our YouTube channel.